Hey there, welcome in, and thank you for clicking on play. And happy Halloween! I am out here in South Pasadena, California, in front of one of the most famous movie houses, the most famous horror movie houses, the Myers residence from the one and only original John Carpenter's Halloween 1978. It is right here in downtown South Pasadena at a very busy intersection right next to train tracks. The train is running every couple of minutes. Lots of cars, lots of pedestrians, so kind of hard to get through this introduction here without some noise, vehicles, trains, that type of thing. But yeah, so I'm out here in South Pasadena in front of the Myers residence, and I want to take you on a tour of all of the filming locations of the film that started the horror genre off on the right path, I would say. A whole new path, a whole new revolution. We're going to go to the Strode residence. We're going to go to the Hedge. We're going to go to the school that Laurie went to. You know what? Hold on. Wait a minute. That's kind of been done before, hasn't it? That's actually been done really, really well by some really great people. I probably can't do any better than what they did. What can I do? What can we do that would make it different? What can we do that would make it original? Something you haven't seen before. Let me think a second here. Put down my pumpkin. I have an idea. I have an idea for something that I think is original, something you haven't seen before. And there's a train coming. So come along with me, and we're going to try and have a little bit of fun, okay? A few laughs. Hang in there with me. Hopefully it'll be worth your time. See you soon. Bye. Hi, I'm Laurie Strode. You might know me as the final girl that survived Halloween 1978, the horrendous events that occurred in Haddonfield, Illinois, at the hands of the boogeyman, Michael Myers. The events of that night have haunted me ever since. I was so traumatized I had to move away from Haddonfield, as I could not bear to stay here, surrounded by all those memories. So I moved away. I had 2 failed marriages. I had a daughter that grew to hate me. I lived in fear of Michael Myers and fear that he would return one day. Everybody thought I was nuts. I lost custody of my daughter, gained a ton of weight from PTSD. How do you deal with PTSD? I dealt with it by emotional eating. I don't know how you deal with it, but that's how I dealt with it. So now I have to lose all this weight. And I have no chance at happiness as long as the memories of the night continue to haunt and torment me. So after 45 years, I have decided to return to Haddonfield today to retrace my steps and the steps of the boogeyman, Michael Myers. It is my hope by rewalking the streets of Haddonfield and revisiting these places, I can finally put the events of that night behind me and move on. I've got to try if I am to have any chance at happiness in my life. Since then, I've become a bit of a public figure. Everywhere I go, people recognize me. Everywhere I want to go, people want to talk to me about Halloween 1978. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to put it behind me. But I'm inviting you to come along with me on this final journey today. And yes, in the hopes of being able to walk the streets of Haddonfield today without being recognized, I am wearing a wig. Everybody knows me. Every time I go somewhere, my photograph is taken. It's in the newspapers. Laurie Strode was spotted having dinner here or there. The girl that survived Halloween 1978. Well, I don't want to be recognized today. If I were to walk around here today with my super short hair, I would surely be spotted and stopped. And that's not what today's about. I just want to walk the streets of Haddonfield one last time, so I can put this all behind me. So I thought, kind of go back to the old Laurie. I mean, come on, it's not the first time you've seen Laurie Strode in a wig, right? Michael Myers and the events of Halloween 1978 are an evil, and they are an evil that has resided within me for the last 45 years. If I am successful, my hope is that evil dies tonight. This is where it all started. This is where it all started. Halloween night, 1963. That's when a 6-year-old Michael Myers killed his teenage sister Judith. He was watching her through the windows. That lower window on the right. I'm told that's the living room. That's where Judith was entertaining her boyfriend. Then the two of them went upstairs, and he watched them through the upper window. Up there. I heard from the neighbors the boyfriend was not there for long. He was in and out in a matter of minutes. But he watched them, and he walked around the side of his house, went through the back gate over here. Well, went through the back entrance. Went through that door into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, went up the stairs. This is where it all started. The Michael Myers house. The Myers residence. It was up there in that bedroom, on the upper right, just beyond those windows, that Judith and her boyfriend had a brief moment together, a brief romantic encounter, before Michael Myers would come home and stab her to death. The home is no longer in its original location. It used to be located just up the street a little bit. I remember it well. It's been moved to this new location, right next to a train station, right next to the railroad tracks, where it's in prominent display for the whole world to see. Back then, it was in a very dilapidated state, and it could have been torn down, and it should have been torn down. In fact, it was slated to be torn down, but some crazy person decided it would be a great idea to preserve it, move it here, and restore it. Why? Why would anybody do that? I don't know. The residents of Haddonfield, they wanted it torn down. They wanted it destroyed. But no. Somebody thought it would be a great idea to save it and move it here so people could come from all around to see the Michael Myers house. Well, there you have it. There's the Michael Myers house. I heard it was later purchased by a really nice gay couple. Both of them were named John, I believe I heard. They were bragging about it to the whole neighborhood. They bought the Myers house. They bought the Myers house. And they really did it up when Halloween time came around. From what I understand, though, that did not bode well for them in the end. Listen, people, word of advice. It's really not a good idea to buy homes that are alleged to be haunted, that were occupied by deranged killers like Michael Myers. It's not a good idea. It never ends well. Have you not seen any horror movies at all? Nevertheless, the house remains as a testament to Halloween 1978. People come from all around to see it. Something about psychotic killers that fascinates people. And you too can come and see it if you would like. If you would like to stand where the boogeyman, Michael Myers, was born and raised. I have to get in the car to go to the next location. It's a little further away. Oh. The keys. Oh, the keys. Oh, the keys. Now we are really returning to the scene of the crime. This is the back gate to Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where Michael Myers had been institutionalized for 15 years, since the age of 6. Dr. Loomis later told me how he drove here to pick up Michael for a court appearance, and upon his arrival he found Michael and several other inmates just wandering these grounds. No idea how they escaped. No idea how that occurred. That is the road Dr. Loomis would have traveled that night on his way to Smith's Grove to pick up Michael for his court appearance. Dr. Loomis jumped out of his car and he ran over to the gate here, using the intercom to try and contact somebody at the hospital, while Nurse Chambers remained in the car. Michael Myers saw that as his opportunity to escape. He jumped on the roof of the car, overpowered Nurse Chambers, and took off in the car, headed straight for Haddonfield, 150 miles away. How on earth did Michael Myers steal a car and drive 150 miles to Haddonfield? He had been institutionalized since he was 6 years old. How did he learn to drive? How did he escape in the first place? Nobody has ever provided an explanation for how Michael Myers escaped Smith's Grove Sanitarium. He just stole that car and he headed straight home, like it was nothing at all. In all these years, nobody has explained it. Nobody has stepped up. Nobody has accepted responsibility. Why wasn't he watched closer? Why didn't the people of Smith's Grove do their job? Dr. Loomis certainly did his by telling everybody he needed to remain locked up forever and the key thrown away. But in all these years, no one's accepted responsibility. They're just like, yeah, well, that was kind of unfortunate. It sucks to be you. We don't really know. So, sorry. Dr. Loomis knew then the evil was gone from here. Dr. Loomis knew where he was headed. The evil was headed home to Haddonfield to change my life and the lives of my friends and the lives of the people of Haddonfield forever. Why did they let him out? Why? And so it begins. It's only fitting that my journey to put the past behind me by retracing the steps of that night begins right here, at the entrance to Haddonfield, Illinois. This was Haddonfield, the peaceful neighborhood I was born and raised in. I don't remember the birds being this noisy back then. It was a quiet neighborhood. These birds must have came later. It was a quiet neighborhood I called home until I was 17 years old. The events of Halloween 1978, it changed all of that. It wasn't a quiet, peaceful neighborhood anymore. It all started as a beautiful fall day in our small town. The autumn leaves were falling onto the streets, onto the sidewalks. It was so pretty. The air was that beautiful, crisp fall air that we look forward to all year long. I mean, it was such a beautiful day. It started as such a beautiful day. You could literally see Haddonfield, Halloween in the air. That's how beautifully that day began. But it ended in bloodshed and the unleashing of evil in our beautiful town of Haddonfield, Illinois. And so my journey begins here. This is the family home I grew up in. I haven't been back here in practically 45 years. It still looks so much the same. I remember leaving for school that day. I came out that door right there. My father's car was parked in the driveway. His Strode Realty sign on the side door. And I just began walking down the sidewalk on my way to school. Gosh, I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember walking out that door. I remember walking down this sidewalk. My father came out and he yelled after me, "Don't forget to drop the key off at the Myers place." I assured him I wouldn't forget. I've got this. This pedestal here. This was my favorite place to just sit, contemplate life, watch the cars go by. When I left for school that day, it was just like any other ordinary day. I was thinking about my classes. I remember thinking about how would I entertain the kid I was babysitting that night. I had no idea my life was about to change forever. Not just my life, my friends, and really all the residents of Haddonfield. Town has not been the same since. Just across the street there is a plaque I need to go check out. I can't believe it. I gotta go see this for myself. After the story of the events of that night broke, of course, Hollywood decided to get a hold of it and turn it into a movie. So I have to see this. There is the bench where I heard they erected this plaque. What do you know? Look at that. Mustafa Akkad, known to the world as the godfather of the Halloween film series. Your legacy lives on. I'm sorry, your legacy lives on? It was my friends and I that endured the horrible events of that evening. Where's our fucking plaque? After I left my home that morning, I walked down this street on my way to the Myers house. I vividly remember those white horizontal, whatever that is, I don't even know, over there by that house. I walked down the street, crossed the street, and made my way on down to the original location of the Myers house. Once I crossed the street, I walked down this way, making my way to the Myers house, just like any other ordinary school day, not thinking anything of it, completely unaware of the events that were about to unfold. I continued down this street. I remember walking past this house with the picket fence, and as I approached this corner, I ran into Tommy Doyle. He came running from that direction. Yeah, this was it. He was the boy I was going to be babysitting that night, and he was so excited. He was so excited. He was such a cute kid. He wanted to know, "Laurie, can we make jack-o'-lanterns? Laurie, can we watch monster movies? Laurie, will you read books to me? And can we make popcorn?" I promised him that we would do all those things. He was a really good kid. Right here, this is where the Myers house originally stood. They've built a new building on the property. Looks a lot different. I had to double check, take a second look to be sure. But this is definitely it. This is definitely it. Because right across the street there, over there, that's Mr. and Mrs. Elrod's house. After the events of that night, he broke into their house and stole their knife. Thank goodness he left Mr. and Mrs. Elrod alone, took that knife and went on his way. So I came here and did exactly what my father asked me to do.
I came right to this property. I walked up and I put the key under the mat. I told Tommy to wait. I told him I had to go up there and put the key under the mat. And he said, "Laurie, you're not supposed to go up there." Tommy told me it's a spook house. He said the neighborhood kids say that it's haunted. I should have listened to him. I've often wondered, did Michael see me do that? Did he see me step on his property and place that key under the mat? We know he was already in Haddonfield by then. Was he in the house watching me? Is that why he pursued me and my friends? I have wondered for decades. Why me? Why did Michael Myers come after me? And that's the only explanation I could think of that makes any sense. He saw me step on his property to place that key under the mat, and he decided to pursue me. You know, somebody started an awful rumor that Michael Myers was my brother, and that's why he came after me. But that was a lie. That was total BS. Over the years, there have been other lies, so many lies too. True lies, so many of them. I bore a daughter with a telepathic connection to Michael. I faked my own death and moved away. All of it was lies. Some real crazy shit people came up with. None of it was true. This right here was a school. This is where Tommy Doyle attended school. And after the events of Halloween night, he told me all about what happened that day. He said as he was leaving school, as he was walking down this corridor, he was bullied by some of his school buddies. They were teasing him, they were taunting him, saying, "The boogeyman is coming, the boogeyman is coming, he's gonna get you, he's gonna get you." And they caused him to trip. And when he tripped, he fell over and he smashed his pumpkin that he wanted me to carve for him that night. It happened right there as he was leaving school. I tell you, those little boys, they can be such little brats. Such brats, little boys, sometimes. But you know what they say, karma can be a bitch. So as one of those boys was leaving Ritchie Castle, I heard that right here, as he was trying to walk away, he bumped into a man wearing blue overalls. A man we now know was Michael Myers. Why Michael spared Ritchie that night? I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to attack small children, only teenagers. Poor Tommy. I could just see him there. So Tommy got up, tried to lick his wounds, and he slowly started walking home. He would have gone down this route, crossing over the grass back there, I assume, taking one of the shortcuts that was there at the time. It's not there anymore. There's fences now. Ever since Halloween 1978, there's fences everywhere. Schools didn't used to have fences. But Michael Myers taught us the kind of world that we live in. A world with evil. And how we have to take preventative measures to protect our children. After Tommy finished cutting through the schoolyard, he continued walking here, past the school, with Michael Myers following him right down this street. He was unaware. He thought he saw something out of the corner of his eye, but he was so sullen from what had happened with the bullying and smashing of his pumpkin. He just didn't take it seriously. He just kept walking past the school with his head hung down, with a madman in hot pursuit. This is something I don't understand. This is something that has haunted me all these years. Why was Michael Myers going after Tommy? Was it because he was with me when I put the key under the mat at his old home? Was it my fault? I've just never been able to get over the thought that maybe Michael Myers went after Tommy because of me. Right there, that set of windows to the right of the door, that was my classroom. I was in that classroom and I'm glancing out those windows when I saw a shadowy figure with a station wagon across the street. course, we now know that shadowy figure was Michael Myers. He was standing right over here. I saw him plain as day. I looked out. I saw a man with a station wagon. I looked back, trying to listen to the teacher. I looked back again. He was still there. Right there. Plain as day. And then the teacher asked me a question and interrupted me, and I lost my train of focus. And when I looked back the third time, he was gone. This is what I'm talking about. This is why I'm here. I thought I was saying things. I've beaten myself up for 45 years for not saying anything. Could I have stopped the events that were about to occur? I don't know. But those are the kind of thoughts that haunt me throughout the day and night. Michael Myers took a lot from me that night. He took my peace, my inner peace, my joy, my innocence, my friends, my home. He took a lot. There's one thing he could never take away from me, though, and that is my great rack. I still got that, so I got that going for me. Sheriff Brackett told me that later that night, Michael Myers returned here. He came back to my school. Was he perhaps in search of me? I don't know. Why would he come back here at night? That night, after everything that occurred, he had his knives out that night, and he put one of them through a drawing of a family on a classroom desk. And then he wrote the word Sam Hain in blood on the classroom bulletin board. Sam Hain being the Druids' Lord of the Dead, for whom the first Halloween was celebrated. I don't know what was going on in Michael's mind that night. But one thing for sure. He was the Lord of the Dead in Haddonfield that night. This was the entrance to my high school, Haddonfield High School. It's now called South Pasadena High School. Some brilliant, genius city officials thought if they renamed the town from Haddonfield to Pasadena, that would help the town kind of pretend it never happened, help the town move on. So many people were coming from all around the world because they wanted to see the real life locations where the events from Halloween 1978 occurred. It didn't work. They still come. They still come in droves. You can change the name of a town, people, okay? I don't know what you guys were thinking, but the people are still going to come. You can't erase what happened here, okay? You can't erase Halloween 1978 from existence. You just can't. You may call it Pasadena now, South Pasadena, whatever the hell you want to call it. But to anyone and everyone that is familiar with Halloween 1978, this town, it will always be Haddonfield. This was also the entrance that Linda and I walked out of every day when we left school. It's the entrance we walked out of when we left school that day. Halloween, October 31, 1978. She was going on and on about all the things she totally had to do the following day. I didn't know that would be the last time we left school together. If I had known, I wouldn't have been jealous. I was a little jealous of all the things that she had going on when I had nothing going on. I wasn't going to the homecoming dance. I had no boyfriends. All the boys just thought I was too smart and I wouldn't be any fun as a girlfriend. If I had only known that would be the last time we would leave this school together, I would have hugged her. I would have told her I loved her. I would have told her how happy I was for her, that her life was working out so well. But I didn't know. The path we took as we left school and worked our way home is no longer here. Everything has been remodeled. I guess the school is trying to move on too. But I do remember right about here there was a huge sign that said Haddonfield High School, and this was all grass. This walkway wasn't here then. I just remember that sign so well. And I remember those two houses across the street. I remember them because they would peek up a little bit. You would see the top of those houses peeking up above the Haddonfield High School sign. I just always thought those were very charming houses. So I remember them. And that is the main entrance to what was Haddonfield High School on Halloween, 1978. I'm going back to retrace the steps my friends Linda and Annie and I used to take on our way home from school every day. It's amazing, 45 years almost, and very little has changed. Just incredible. How many times did we walk down these sidewalks together? Oh no! Oh! There used to be a huge tree here. It's gone. Every day we would walk down that street and turn this way, and we would pass by this enormous tree, and it's gone. Just like Haddonfield's innocence, I guess. Oh dear. On that fateful day, I distinctly remember Linda and I walking down this sidewalk on our way home from school. We came from that way, and then we turned this corner. And we just started walking like it was any other ordinary day. Just not aware of what was lurking just beyond. A moment later, I remember Annie joined us. And once again, the threesome was enjoying its daily walk home from school, chatting about the evening's festivities. Annie had a big date with Paul that night. Linda had a big date with Bob. And meanwhile, I was looking forward to studying and taking care of Tommy Doyle that night. I don't remember these shrubs being this big. We used to be able to walk down this path a lot easier. I remember Annie said she was late because Paul had dragged her into the boys' bathroom or locker room, something like that. And we were teasing her. She was so much fun. Rest in peace, Annie. Rest in peace. After Annie joined us, I don't remember exactly where, but at some point we crossed this street. It was right about when we got here, if I seem to recall correctly. It's been 45 years. I'm pretty sure it was right around here when I paused. And I realized that I had forgotten my chemistry book. And I remember stopping and asking the girls, wait, should I go back and get my chemistry book? And I remember Linda saying, so what? You forgot your chemistry book? I mean, what's the big deal? I forget my books all the time. You don't need your chemistry book. It's okay. It's totally fine. I do remember vividly as I was glancing back, trying to decide if I should go get my books, despite what Linda said. I remember seeing a station wagon pull in, like it was following us. It came to about where we were standing, and it kind of paused a little bit, and it looked our way, and then it sped off. I remember Linda and Annie thought it was Devin Graham, but I told them, I don't think so. It looked like the shadowy figure that I had seen outside my classroom window. After the car sped off, Annie leaned over and yelled, "Hey, jerk! Speed kills!" And at that point, the car came to a screeching halt. I thought we were done for. I thought that was it. I thought, this is the guy that's been kind of following me all day. I don't really know what's going on yet, but Annie just kind of did a big no-no. The vehicle stopped for a moment, but then it took off again. And we were safe. At least for the time being. I believe this tree here, I think this is about where he stopped, if I recall, after Annie yelled at him. Hey, jerk, speed kills. Like, who does shit like that? Granted, it was a different time, 1978. It was still the days of innocence. Not anymore. After Linda convinced me I did not need to go back and get my chemistry book, and after the mysterious station wagon driver drove off, you know, Linda, Annie, and I, we just continued our walk home like any other ordinary day. There are some of those falling leaves I was telling you about. I mean, is that not beautiful? Look at them. I just love the way the leaves fall in Haddonfield. As we walked, eventually we approached Linda's house over here. This one right here. That was Linda's house. So right about here we paused and Linda said her farewells for the time being. We asked her what time she would be ready later, and she said, I gotta see if I can get out of taking my kid brother trick-or-treating. I'll let you know. And she said her goodbyes. Little did I know that was the last time I would see Linda alive. Now, because of Halloween 1978, the house became famous. All of our houses became famous. People started coming from all around the country to see the houses from Halloween 1978. A TV producer decided to use Linda's house to be the home for a main character in a television show called Mama's Family. So every week, viewers got to see Linda, who suffered that tragic fate. They got to see her house during the opening credits of that show every week for as long as it ran. Hollywood had no respect for the victims of Michael Myers. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. It was right here. Mama would come out, walk down the steps to pick up her newspaper at the start of every episode. The same walkway we watched Linda walk away for what would be the last time. It's so sad. I pray for her. I pray for all the victims of Michael Myers. All of them. From Halloween 1978 and beyond. Alright, what happened next was really the strangest thing. After we said goodbye to Linda, Annie and I continued walking on the way to her home. And then something bone-chilling occurred. Something that has haunted me for years. You see that hedge? I could have sworn I saw a man pop out and then disappear as quickly as he appeared. I could have sworn it was the man that I saw driving the car. The one that Annie yelled at. Hey, jerk, speed kills. But Annie went to check. And when she got there, she found no one. Of course, she teased me a little bit. She said there was somebody there that wanted a date with me. But in reality, she said there was no one there. I'm going to show you exactly what I saw, and you'll understand why I was taken aback. Despite of the events, it's kind of good to be back here in old Haddonfield. My mind's playing tricks on me. It's been 45 years. What? This is like deja fucking vu. This is why I'm back here, to put all this behind me once and for...
Hello. Oh my God, my ears. Trick or treat?
Trick! You don't mess with Laurie Strode like that. I got skills, man. Mad skills. Happy Halloween! Finally, as we continued walking, we approached Annie's house. Right here. This was my beloved Annie's house. She said her goodbyes for the time being. She promised to pick me up later and take me to the babysitting job, since we were babysitting kids that lived across the street from each other. And as she said her goodbyes, I turned back to look at that hedge one more time. I remember asking myself, am I truly losing my mind? And when I turned back, I really did have the scare of a lifetime. I bumped into Linda's dad, Sheriff Brackett. He scared the bejeebies out of me, but I was relieved it was only him and not the shadowy figure I had now seen a total of 3 times. Sheriff Brackett, he was a good guy. I remember him saying, everyone deserves one good scare on Halloween. Little did he know we were all about to have the scares of our lifetime. Sheriff Brackett didn't deserve it. Annie didn't deserve it. None of us deserved it. When I finally arrived home from school that day, I remember making my way to the front door. I remember hearing some noises, so I stopped. Turned out to just be trick-or-treaters. I enjoyed seeing the little kids in their costumes on what would be the last enjoyable Halloween for me and for Haddonfield. It looks as beautiful as it did then. I made my way up the stairs, enjoying the children's laughter, and went on inside. I wanted to freshen up and change my clothes before I went to my babysitting job. And then I remember receiving a phone call. I thought it was an obscene phone call. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. Throughout the day, I was feeling as though I was seeing shadowy figures. My imagination was running amok. I get a call and all I hear is chewing. I thought it was an obscene phone caller. It just turned out to be Annie. She was funny that way. She's always pulling the practical jokes. After I changed my clothes and endured Annie's chewing call, I came and sat on my pedestal as usual, holding the pumpkin I had for Tommy. And I waited for Annie to arrive, enjoying the view of the trick-or-treaters to the right. And as soon as Annie arrived, she pulled up right there, and I got in the car with her and we drove off. Unaware that we were being followed on the majority of our journey. This is the cemetery where Judith Myers was laid to rest. When Dr. Loomis figured out that Michael had probably headed straight towards Haddonfield, he came here
and he met with the caretaker. He later told me the caretaker brought him this way, even though this is a one-way road that goes the other direction. Caretaker didn't seem to care. Wait, shouldn't a caretaker care? Isn't that like literally their job? As the caretaker and Dr. Loomis made their way across the lawn, they paused by this headstone for Sinclair. Nobody in Haddonfield knew at that time that Michael Myers had escaped and headed straight for Haddonfield. They scanned around. Dr. Loomis asked the caretaker, "Where is it? Where is it?" He knew the gravesite number, but he was not finding the headstone. That's because Michael Myers had dug up Judith's headstone and taken it with him as he left the cemetery. I would later find that headstone on the bed where dearly departed Annie had been laid by the boogeyman, Michael Myers, after he slaughtered her. I need a minute. Annie's slain body laying on the bed under Judith's headstone. That was my first horrific discovery of the night. And that one is particularly painful. More discoveries followed. But that moment, that's when I knew my world had changed forever. The caretaker knew Judith's grave was in this approximate location, but they could not find her headstone. They could not. And that is when they made their horrific discovery that the headstone had been stolen. I don't believe the headstone has ever been returned, for fear it will attract more looky-loos that will come and try to repeat the same offense that Michael Myers committed that night. Judith Myers now lays to rest in an unmarked grave, so that no one else may come and desecrate her gravesite. I'm standing in just about the spot where I now know Michael Myers turned onto this road and followed us. This is it. This is the street Annie and I were driving down when I thought I saw in the rearview mirror somebody pull out of that street right back there and turn and start following us. We know Michael Myers had to have followed us. How would he have known where we were? And this is the road we drove. I'll never forget, because I remember the house back there with the Spanish tile roof. I remember admiring that as we made our way down this road on our way to what would become the worst night of our lives. So far, a lot of things in Haddonfield have looked as though time has stood still. This place, not so much. Annie and I were driving up that street, coming towards me, when we noticed her dad's car here in front of the hardware store. We noticed some commotion. So we quickly tried to put out those joints and erase any smell as we pulled up in front of the hardware store to talk to her dad. We did not realize at the time that Michael was following us. We figured that out later. He must have pulled over as we approached the hardware store, and we just came right from there and pulled up right in front of the hardware store here. This was that hardware store. It's now apparently an Indian restaurant. When we approached it, I know we were very, very worried that Sheriff Brackett was going to know what we were up to. That's a funny memory I have. But he didn't seem to suspect a thing. We asked him what was going on, and he assured us, it was just kids. They just broke in, stole some Halloween masks, some rope, and a couple knives. They really didn't think anything of it. Just another Halloween prank is what they thought. As I look back on that now, I realize that was a sign. That was a sign. That was a freaking sign, and we completely missed it. Somebody breaks into a hardware store on Halloween night, the day after a lunatic has escaped from a mental hospital, and steals knives and rope and masks. How on God's earth did we all miss that? Sheriff Brackett later told us after we pulled off, a man approached from this way. That man, of course, turned out to be Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis said he needed a moment of his time, and Sheriff Brackett said he just needed a few minutes and they would talk. While Dr. Loomis waited for Sheriff Brackett to become available, he stood here, unaware. Michael Myers was right back there. And he came up, and he was following us. We didn't know it at the time, but he was following us to our babysitting jobs. Michael Myers literally drove right behind Dr. Loomis, and he didn't even notice. He didn't even notice. I mean, think about that for a second. Michael Myers literally drove right behind Dr. Loomis, and he didn't even notice. He didn't have a clue. I'll tell you, that Dr. Loomis, he was one hell of a doctor, but he was no detective. That's for damn sure. This is the path Annie and I drove. And right there by that tree is where we believe Michael Myers pulled over as he saw the police car and the commotion up front by the hardware store. This is the exact path that we followed. She saw her dad's car over there, and we just swung around and pulled up to talk to him. We just turned this corner and pulled up in front of the restaurant, which was then the hardware store. And then went on with our day after Sheriff Brackett told us everything was okay. Nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. This might seem trivial, but I had to come visit this road as well. I remember it specifically. I remember the curve in the road and the concrete basin in the middle of the road. This was another road that Annie drove down as she drove me to our babysitting gigs. And we were unaware that we were being followed by the boogeyman, Michael Myers, down this road the whole time. The whole time. He followed us all the way, at least from the hardware store to where we were babysitting. She drove to the end of the road there and turned right. This is one of the last roads Annie and I drove on together as we made the way to our babysitting jobs. I now know this is the last time Annie drove her vehicle. She never made it out of the house that night. She never went to go get Paul. The boogeyman had killed her when she got in the car to leave. This was the last road Annie drove on, alive, before making the final turn to the babysitting houses. Practically see the station wagon. I could see us driving that way. I could practically see that station wagon coming down this curved road. I could practically see it. If only I had seen it that night. as we made our right turn on the final leg of our journey.
I made it to the part of town where Annie and I babysat that night. I received quite a surprise on my arrival. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. The Doyle residence where I babysat for Tommy Doyle that night, it's been gutted, it's being completely redone. Perhaps they're trying to put the nightmares of that Halloween behind them, just like I am. Or, I mentioned, the houses from Halloween 1978 are pretty popular and tourists come from around the world to see them, to see the places where these horrendous events occurred. Maybe they're trying to discourage that. I don't know. This is the Wallace residence. This is where little Lindsay Wallace resided with her family. While I was across the street babysitting for Tommy Doyle, Annie was over here babysitting for Lindsay, just across the street from each other. As you can see, this home has been drastically remodeled too. Perhaps they too are trying to erase the memories of that night and the events that occurred here. Or they're just tired of people coming by and looking at the houses from Halloween 1978. Either thing is possible. All I know is, while I was over there taking care of Tommy, I received a phone call from Annie. She wanted to tell me that she had spoken to Ben Tramer. to my horror. She told him about my attraction to him and was trying to arrange for us to go to homecoming together. Oh my gosh, just the thought. I told her I was mortified. I begged her to call him back and tell him it was a mistake. But deep down, I don't know, I was kind of excited actually. I really liked Ben Tramer. Later, she asked if she could bring Lindsay over to my house, where I was babysitting for Tommy. She had spoken with Paul and was going to pick him up. So I said, okay, bring her over. And Lindsay and Tommy watched movies together while Annie went to get her boyfriend. Inside, the kids were enjoying a viewing of The Thing, but not the amazing John Carpenter version, because John Carpenter can do no wrong. That man is amazing. No, this was the original version of The Thing, so it was keeping them entertained, so I was all right with that. Throughout the evening, Tommy kept looking out the windows that apparently are no longer there since they have been ripped out, and he kept telling me he was seeing the boogeyman across the street. Over there. Every time I looked out the windows, I saw nothing. I thought it was just his imagination gone crazy. Before the night was over, boy, did I find out how wrong I was. I was so wrong. So wrong. After Annie left, I watched as Linda and Bob arrived in his van. He parked in the street and the two went inside. As I looked out the window of the Doyle house, I thought Annie would be back by now with Paul. I thought everybody was just having a good time tonight. Meanwhile, my friends were being murdered. These are the things that have haunted me for the last 45 years. All the signs were there that something was wrong. I thought they were playing a prank on me, especially after Linda called me and made a bunch of squealing noises. After Annie's call earlier in the day while she was chewing, I just thought it was another prank call. I had no idea the horrific events that were unfolding in the house just across the street from me. When I finally suspected something might be off, I tried to call, but there was no answer. So I crossed the street, left the house, left the kids inside, locked the door, and crossed the street to investigate. Entered the home through a side door. I walked on up, and I made the brutal discovery of first Annie's body laying on the bed with Judith Myers' headstone atop of her. Then I discovered the bodies of Bob and Linda. It was the most horrifying encounter of my entire life. No wonder it's haunted me for 45 years. Just a moment later, I found myself fighting for my own life when that shadowy figure I'd been seeing all day appeared right in front of me. I didn't know his name at the time, but it was Michael Myers. He sliced my arm with a knife, one of those knives that he had stolen from the hardware store, and sent me just falling right over the staircase railing. And in that moment, everything, everywhere, all at once, it finally all added up. It finally made sense. After making that brutal discovery, I ran back over here to the Doyle house as fast as I could. In my state of panic, I couldn't find my keys to get in the door. So I did the next best thing. I picked up a pot and threw it at the upper window to Tommy's bedroom and begged him to get down there and open the door for me. Meanwhile, the man who was yet to be identified, who would come to be known as Michael Myers, the shape, was following in my footsteps. By the way, did I mention, after I fled that house, I ran to the next door neighbor's house, banging on the door, begging for help, pleading. They turned their lights on, and when they saw me, they turned their lights off and did nothing to help. I could not believe I was being treated like this by neighbors within Haddonfield. I got back in the house. That house that's being ripped apart, as it deserves to be. Seconds later, I discovered the boogeyman got in the house too. He appeared before me and we struggled. And I stabbed him with a knitting needle. I thought I killed him. Knit one, purl two, motherfucker! I ran upstairs and told the kids they were safe, that I had killed the shape, that I had killed the boogeyman. I was wrong. To my shock and dismay, he stood up once again. At that point, I told the kids to lock themselves in Tommy's bedroom, and I ran and I hid in the closet of another bedroom. I braced myself to fight the evil that invaded our lives, and I did. I killed him a second time. Laurie Strode is one badass. One real badass. I freed the kids. I told them to run down to the neighbor's house and call the police. I thought it was finally over, and as I sat there trying to catch my breath and compose myself once again, what do you think happened? The shape. It rose again. It rose again. Unfreaking believable. The contractor was nice enough to let me come inside and retrace those steps. These are the stairs I walked up to assure the children we were safe. The same steps Michael Myers came up soon after. As I was scratched there talking to the children, telling them we were safe, that I had killed the boogeyman, we turned, and right there we saw him standing in the flesh at the back there by the window after having come up the staircase. I ran into this room and told the children to go into that room and lock the door. Moments later, Dr. Loomis would fly up those stairs, coming to my rescue. As I fought for my life, right here, where I faced the boogeyman, and Loomis shot him, saving my life. I'm so grateful Dr. Loomis found Michael's car on this spot. I am so grateful for Dr. Loomis coming to my rescue. I faced the boogeyman, and I lived to tell, because of Dr. Loomis. By the grace of God, he was close enough to hear the children's screams as they fled from the house. He came running, ran up those stairs, and he shot that being that stood in front of me 6 times. 6 times. Sending Michael falling over the balcony backwards and landing on the ground below. In that moment, I knew Tommy Doyle was right. He was the boogeyman. It was the boogeyman. He was pure evil, and I came face to face with him that night and lived to tell. I deal with tremendous survivor's guilt over that. If Michael was after me, why did he go after my friends? Why was I the one to walk away, and they didn't? If anybody asked me if I would be interested in trading places with them, I would in a heartbeat. But that was not the outcome fate had in store for us that night.
Thank you, Dr. Loomis. I can never thank you enough. After that, after Michael was shot and fell over the balcony and the police arrived, by then I was in a state of shock. After all that, the fog that had entered my brain, it kind of rendered me useless. I don't remember a lot of the details after that. I just remember being wheeled out of here on a gurney and a couple of paramedics watching over me. Later, Dr. Loomis told me that the next door neighbors came out after hearing all of the commotion over at the Doyle house. They were wondering if it was another prank, at least the man that lived there was. He told Dr. Loomis he was sick to death of being trick-or-treated. Dr. Loomis told him he had no idea what death was. He had no idea what death had come to Haddonfield. Soon after, Annie's body was wheeled out of the Wallace house. Her father, Sheriff Brackett, ID'd the body and left to break the news to his wife. The police wanted to blame Dr. Loomis for this. Everyone accused him of letting Michael out. Dr. Loomis didn't let Michael out. Loomis did everything within his power to keep him institutionalized. It was the system that failed the people of Haddonfield, not Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis is a hero. Dr. Loomis saved my life. And I'm still here 45 years later, telling the story thanks to him. After I had recovered from my injuries, I was filled in on all the details of that night. I learned that this very alley is an alley Michael Myers used to escape. As he walked down the alley, I understand he encountered a barking dog. Somebody was talking about that afterwards, that their dog saw Michael Myers right there. But he slipped into the night. Right there, he slipped into the Elrod's house, Mr. and Mrs. Elrod's house, and there he stole a knife. But by the grace of God, he left them alone. The alley Michael Myers used to escape. Even the birds don't believe it. It was right down there Dr. Loomis finally met up with Sheriff Brackett. And that's where he told him, "I shot him 6 times! I shot him 6 times!" Sheriff Brackett was finally taking Dr. Loomis seriously. They continued on in their hunt for Michael. I don't remember the birds of Haddonfield being so loud. Dudes, I'm trying to make a video here. Like, do you care at all? This was the home of Alice. I don't remember her last name. I don't know if I ever even knew her last name, to be honest. She was not so lucky. She was not so lucky. After Michael stole the knife from the Elrods, Alice heard some screaming coming from there. We heard from her friend Sally, who Alice was on the phone with at the time, but Alice didn't think anything of it. She carried on her conversation with Sally. With the news only just starting to break, she was unaware of the threat that stood just outside her door. The poor girl just didn't have enough time to react. She just didn't stand a chance with Michael Myers lurking in the shadows. That's the back door she came out of to call to the Elrods before she went back inside and continued talking to Sally. Poor girl. Yet another victim of Michael Myers. I figured as long as I'm retracing all of my steps of that night, I needed to come back here. I've never been able to figure this out. After they put me in the ambulance and they started me on my way to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, the paramedics drove the ambulance through this parking lot. On the way to the hospital, problem is, this parking lot is part of a shopping center. Here's Nordstrom. It's a huge shopping center. So I've never been able to figure out why the paramedics took me through a shopping center parking lot on the way to the hospital. I mean, I'm laying in the back there bleeding, and they're taking me shopping? Just never could figure it out. The only thing I could think is that Jimmy boy, that paramedic, I think he was a little sweet on me. I don't know. Maybe he thought he'd buy me a gift? Cheer me up? Only thing is, Jimmy didn't know. I only had eyes for Ben Tramer. And we know how that worked out. So, I'll never understand it. It's not even anywhere near the hospital. Nowhere near it. But this is it. This is where they drove me. Through this parking lot on the way to the hospital. Go figure. After Dr. Loomis shot Michael Myers 6 times, he thought he had him. Then he looked over the balcony and saw he was gone. He hit the streets and he met up with Sheriff Brackett. Told him that Michael Myers was still on the loose. He had shot him 6 times, and they got in the police car and they drove this way. They stopped right at this intersection because as they looked down here, they saw a figure wearing blue overalls and a white mask. They thought it was Michael Myers. It wasn't Michael Myers. It wasn't Michael Myers in that suit. With the police chasing him, the person in the suit got scared and he ran the other way. And he crossed the street to that intersection. The same intersection I had met Tommy earlier that day. And then the unthinkable happened. It was right here. There was a horrific collision. Ben turned to look and a police car collided into a van. And Ben was crushed and burned to death in the fire that resulted. I don't understand how the police could mistake a sweet boy like Ben Tramer for the evil that is Michael Myers. He died right on the spot as a result of mistaken identity. Ben Tramer was another victim of Michael Myers of Halloween 1978. So while Michael was walking around Haddonfield after he stole the knife from Mr. and Mrs. Elrod, after he killed poor Alice, he overheard on the radio somewhere that I had been taken to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. How could that even be possible? What about my privacy rights? How could they have released my name to the public? They hadn't even been able to get a hold of my parents yet. I'll never understand that. I'll just never understand. Witnesses later remarked that they had seen Michael walk through this court right here and make his way over to the end as he made his way down to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. Let's go ahead and walk the path that Michael walked. A young boy later told everyone that he bumped right into Michael Myers. He was walking through the court here, listening to the news on his boombox. Is that when Michael heard where I had been taken? He continued down this courtyard, walking with that Michael Myers gait that we've all come to know and be terrified by. Passing by this iconic tree that has been a landmark in our town forever. That young boy had no idea of the horrors he had just narrowly escaped. This is the path Michael took. Right down this pathway here. We're following in the steps of Michael Myers. This is awful, but I need to do it. I need to do this. This is what is going to help me heal. Once and for all. Walking in the steps of this madman that destroyed my life.
Oh, cute doggy.
Oh, very cute. Back to Michael. Michael continued on. And at this corner, he turned and continued on foot to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, disappearing from the sight of the nearby witnesses. Oh, that's disgraceful. That's just disgraceful. Somebody is making a mockery of the events of Halloween 1978. They have a Michael Myers statue in front of their storefront. There's just no respect for me and the other victims of Halloween 1978. None. None whatsoever. And Michael has no hands. At least he can't hurt anybody. It's a newspaper article about the night he killed my friends and terrified me. Yesterday, 3 teenagers and an adult male were murdered in one of Haddonfield's worst ever crime scenes. Christopher Hastings, Annie Brackett, Robert, Linda Van... Oh my gosh, I can't even read it. I can't even stand it. All the murdered at the hands of an escaped mental patient, Michael Myers, escaped Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he had spent the past 15 years for murdering his sister Judith Myers when he was only 6 years old. They saved the newspaper from that night, or the day after. I cannot believe it. I hope you burn in hell. In fact, you know what? Now that I have faced my past and stared you down, I will see you in hell, Michael. I will see you in hell. Haddonfield Memorial nurse Karen Bailey had attended a Halloween party earlier that night before her shift. It was the usual Halloween party, apple bobbing. She and a friend of hers had gone together. After the party, she came back here where she had parked her car. Her friend recanted the events later. Nurse Bailey needed to drive her friend home but didn't think she had time. But she honored her commitment and went ahead and did so. She narrowly escaped Michael Myers. The madman was walking this path just moments later. But sadly, he caught up with her later in the hospital's therapy tub. It was right here. Nurse Bailey parked her car for the Halloween party. She seemed like a good girl. I mean, she could have told her friend to, find her own way home because she knew she was tight on time and she was going to be late for work and that nurse was going to rag on her again, the one that was her boss. But no, she did the right thing. She drove her friend home as she promised. She didn't deserve what happened to her. Nobody should have to die that way. Nobody should.
Sorry. Going to all those spots got me pretty thirsty. So I had to stop at old 7-Eleven here to get myself some H2O. While I was in there, I found some Reese's peanut butter pumpkins. I guess you could say that makes this Halloween H2O.
This is the Myers house at night. I needed to come back and see it in the dark. That night, after those events unfolded, the people of Haddonfield rallied. There was a mob that came to the Myers house at night, protesting, demanding justice for me and my friends. So before I end this journey, I needed to come see it for myself at night, the way they saw it that night, when they stood up for me and the other victims of Michael Myers. Of course, it was run down and it was in its other location. But I just needed to feel what they felt when they came in the dark to the Myers residence and they revolted because of what Myers had done to our town. There's one place I went to that night that I cannot return to. I simply cannot. I cannot return to the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital where I was taken away. I just can't. The memories, what occurred there, are just too painful. I was all alone. The nurse was calling my parents over and over again, and they were nowhere to be found. She said they had left the Halloween party they were at with the doctor, and I don't know, where the heck were they? Did they find some lover's leap or something to have a little private session? I mean, I don't know. Where were they? I had a bad reaction to the medicine. Jimmy, the paramedic, was being as nice as he could, but I was terrified. After what I had just endured, I was absolutely terrified. And then just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, he appeared. It appeared. The shape. The boogeyman. He appeared. And I was in for the fight of my life. Dr. Loomis was there and he did everything he could, but before I knew it, I narrowly escaped before it went up in a fiery gas explosion at the hands of Dr. Loomis. He knew Michael could not be stopped, and so he loosened the tanks, lit a match, and kaboom! I got away just in time to watch Michael Myers collapse to the ground and die. Or so I was told. Well, that's it. I'm finally over my Michael Myers trauma. But I met this nice new neighbor. I wonder how this is going to end. Bye.